Yashoda Nandana Vajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yashoda Nandana Vajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Thank you. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parariva Jakatarya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. His confounder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parariva Jakatarya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satyanandana Bhaktivedanta Kaur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunatha Sad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopakopana Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Vrindavan, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Gurunath Raj, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Iskan Bharma Guru Vrinda Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gora Pramanande, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru, Sri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tito Jayam Yuridayat Nasta Preshu Abatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances under the personality of Godhead Narayan, and under Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, under Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and under Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by the rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. In loving service under the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is December 8th, 2024. And so we're going to be doing verses 18 and verses 19. So we'll do verse 19 responsively. So I'm just going to read verse 18, and there's a short purport, and then we'll do verse 19 together. Imanirjara Vishprusmat Kusumakara Vayuna Jalat Pravala Vitapa Nalini Tata Sampadi. The branches of the trees standing on the bank of the lake receive particles of water carried by the spring air from the falls coming down from the icy mountain. Purport. In this verse, the word Hima Nirjara is particularly significant. The waterfall represents a kind of liquid humor or rasa relationship. In the body, there are different types of humor, rasa or mellow. The supreme mellow relationship is called the sexual mellow, adi rasa. When this adi rasa or sex desire comes in contact with the spring air moved by Cupid, it becomes agitated. In other words, all these are representations of rupa, rasa, gandha, shabda, and sparsha. The wind is sparsha or touch. The waterfall is rasa or taste. The spring air, Sumakara, is smell. All these varieties of enjoyment make life very pleasing, and thus created by material existence. Okay, text 19. Okay. Nanaranya Mriga Ratar. Anabate Muni Vritai.
Anabade Muni Vratai.
Ahutam Manyate Panto.
Ahutam Manyate Panto.
Yatra Kokila Kujitai.
Yatra Kokila Kujitai.
Nanaranya Mriga Ratar.
Nanaranya Mriga Rate.
Anabate Muni Vritai.
Anabade Muni Vratai.
Ahutam Manyate Panto.
Ahutam Manyate Panto.
Yatra Kokila Kujitai.
Yatra Kokila Kujitai.
Nanaranya Mriga Rater.
Nanaranya Mriga Rate.
Anabate Muni Vritai.
Anabade Muni Vratai.
Ahutam Manyate Panto.
Ahutam Manyate Panto.
Yatra Kokila Kujitai.
Yatra Kokila Kujitai.
Okay, please chant.
Nanaranya Mriga Vrate.
Nanaranya Mriga Rater.
Anabade Muni Vratai.
Anabate Muni Vritai.
Ahutam Manyate Panto.
Antam Manyate Yato.
Yatra Kokila Kujitai.
Yatra Kokila Kujitai. Nanaranya Mriga Rater. Anabate Muni Vritai. Ahutam Manyate Panto. Yatra Kokila Kujitai.
Nanaranya Mriga Vratai.
Nanaranya Mriga Rater.
Navadhe Muni Vratai.
Anabate Muni Vritai.
Ahutam Manyate Panto.
Ahutam
Kujitai.
Yatra Okay, word for word.
Nana,
Various.
Aries,
Aranya,
Aranya,
forest.
Forest,
Riga,
Riga,
animals.
Animals,
Radai,
Ratai,
with groups.
Groups,
Anabade,
Anabade,
in the matter of nonviolence.
in the matter of non-violence,
Muni Vritai,
Muni Vratai,
like the greater sages.
like the great sages,
Ahutam,
Ahutam,
as if invented, as if invited. Manyate,
Manyate,
thinks. Pantaha,
Pantaha,
passenger.
passenger,
Yatra,
Yatra,
where.
where,
Kokila,
Gokila,
of cuckoos.
of Kukus,
Kujitai,
Kujitai,
by the cooing.
by the cooling.
You seem to be doing better with the Sanskrit than the English today. All right. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. In such an atmosphere, even the animals of the forest became non-violent and non-envious like great sages. Consequently, the animals did not attack anyone. Over and above everything was the cooing of the cuckoos. Any passenger passing along that path was invited by that atmosphere to take rest in that nice garden. Please repeat. In such an atmosphere, even the animals of the forest
Even the animals of the forest
became non-violent and non-envious,
became non-violent and non-envious,
like great sages.
like great sages.
Consequently,
Consequently,
the animals did not attack anyone.
the animals did not attack anyone.
Over and above everything
Over and above everything
was the cooing of the cuckoos.
was the cooing of the cuckoos.
Any passenger passing along that path
Any passenger passing along that path
was invited by that atmosphere
was invited by that atmosphere
to take rest in that nice garden.
to take rest in that nice garden.
Purport. A peaceful family with wife and children is compared to the peaceful atmosphere of the forest. Children are compared to nonviolent animals. Sometimes, however, wives and children are called swajanakya dasu, burglars in the name of kinsmen. A man earns his livelihood with hard labor, but the result is that he is plundered by his wife and children, exactly as a person in a forest is attacked by some thieves and burglars who take his money. Nonetheless, in family life, the turmoil of wife and children appears to be like the cooing of cuckoos in the garden of family life. Being invited by such an atmosphere, the person who is passing through such a blissful family life desires to have his family with him at all costs. Om Jnanatimrandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakara Mayam Darati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raganatam Bitam Tam Sajivam Savadetam Savadutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Para Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagapate Gopesha Gopeka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapti Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrinda Vineshwari Rishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Trubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. All right, so these two verses were continuing the allegory of the city of nine gates, which is for the soul within the body. And so these verses in particular are talking about enjoying our senses within our bodies, and how pleasant and blissful that can be. So Srila Prabhupada, he mentions in the text 18, he mentions basically the different senses. He mentions rupa, which is translated as form, but rasa, which is taste, gandha, which is fragrance or smell, shabda, which is speech or the sound of speech, you can sound, and then sparsha, which is touch, right? And so these are the different ways that we're able to enjoy things by using these different methods of enjoyment, by seeing things, hearing things, touching things, tasting things, or being seen, being touched, so on and so forth, being heard. So there's only one problem with this, right? Actually, there's 4 problems with this. Does anybody know what those? What's that? Well, yes, those are definitely problems, but those are not the 4 I'm referring to, but that is 4 major problems. There's 4 defects of material life. Does anyone know? Cheater, yeah. What did you say? Imperfect senses, yeah. Illusion, yeah. He said cheater. There's one more. Commit mistakes, yeah. All right, yeah. So we have these 4 defects because we're here in the material world. And number 4 is imperfect senses, right? So we have all these great senses from which we can enjoy the material world, but they're imperfect. Let's go. So like with sight, I know personally I wear glasses. My sight is imperfect. I'm getting older. Now all of a sudden I have to hold my book out here so I can read it. Whereas before I could, read like this. That's new. That's new for me this year. It's just starting. And so also, in the dark, you can't see in the dark, right? But there's certain other animals, they're able to see in the dark, right? And they're able to see, very clearly from far away or very close up, depending on what their particular needs are. And then hearing, I certainly, my hearing is definitely imperfect. We know like a dog whistle, right? A dog can hear a dog whistle, but we can't. And so it works on dogs, but it sounds like nothing to us. That's because our sense of hearing is imperfect. Our sense of taste is imperfect, right? Our taste for entertainment can be imperfect, right? Sometimes we're choosing really degraded entertainment, like maybe wrestling or really violent programs, or like monster truck rallies or something. There's nothing really of great value in any of those kinds of entertainment, right? But but our taste for that's maybe not so great. And the same with tasting food or something like that. They have people that their whole job is to taste food and find out like what's in food by just tasting it. And that's a specialized job that they have because they have a greater sense of taste than just say the average person. Let's see. So our sense of smell is not perfect. As we know, just recently there was the smell of some kind of dead animal around. We couldn't find it, right? Because our sense of smell was imperfect. But I bet if we were a dog, we would have been able to find that right away, right?
You should have brought Oliver.
Yeah, I know. Well, we think, or at least I was told by you that there was a cat that was showing some interest in a particular area.
It's sat every morning in the same spot, smelling the same compost pile.
Yeah.
every morning.
And so
That's what it smells.
yeah, he thinks that was because that cat has a better sense of smell than we have. And then our sense of touch, right? That's imperfect too, right? It's very difficult. Did you ever have the experience where maybe you hung up some laundry out to dry and it's cold and you're touching it and you can't tell if it's dry or if it's just cold, right? And so you're like, is this dry or is it cold? Well, that's because our sense of touch is imperfect. So we know, all right, our senses are imperfect, but yet we still believe them when our senses tell us, if you're in the dating world, you know, that, oh, this girl or boy, they're going to be different. They're going to be different than the last one, right? Oh, but they're so beautiful, and they're just so smart, and I just love them so much, and we have a real connection here. They're going to be different. And then what ends up happening majority of the time is it doesn't work out, right? Because you end up having sort of similar problems that you had in the past. But we still believe them. We still believe our senses. Or, you know, we can see with addicts, right? You know, they keep using, thinking, oh, this time I could just drink a little bit and it won't destroy my life. You know, this time I can, that's in rehabs, they would say, like, you're still trying to use successfully, but you're not able to. But you keep thinking, oh, yes, this time I'll just take this one drink and I won't end up, you know, wrecking my car or yelling at my loved ones or dancing on the tabletops, whatever it is. And sure enough, it ends up happening, sometimes worse. And so a common definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, right? So our senses are so imperfect, we think, oh, I know this didn't work out for me the last 15 times, but maybe if I do it again, it'll work out. No, that's insanity.
Is that the mind as a sense? Because the mind is a sense, and you have this idea that it will be successful this time. Is that also an imperfect sense on mind?
Yeah, well, there's a few other senses. I don't recall what all they are off the top of my head, but yeah, that's one of them. Is that we have faith in our mind and we think, yeah, but we shouldn't have faith in our mind, or at least, I mean, our mind can certainly be our friend if we train it. But we should kind of have some healthy skepticism for what our mind is telling us, because it's not always right. At least mine isn't. I don't know.
Don't believe everything you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, sometimes, you know, I just think completely absurd, crazy things. There was something that would happen to me a lot, and I thought, oh my gosh, you know, I'm really crazy having these thoughts. And then I started talking to other people and found out, like, oh, lots of other people have these kind of thoughts too. So like, it would just be totally absurd. Like, I'd be walking across a bridge and my mind would be like, you should just jump off this bridge. I'm like, what? I'm like, no, I shouldn't. What do you mean? Why would I do that? You know? and I was thinking, wow, I'm just real crazy. I'm having these thoughts. And I'd talk to other people that are like, no, that happens to me too. Just out of nowhere. I don't want to drop off the bridge. I'm not suicidal. I'm not depressed or anything. But my mind's just like, hey, wouldn't that be crazy if you jumped off this bridge? You should do that. No, I should not do that. So you can't always trust what your mind's telling you. So we know it's known in law enforcement that the most unreliable form of evidence is eyewitness testimony, right? Eyewitness testimony is sometimes, you know, some people want to think like, oh, that's the gold standard. You know, they were seen doing this thing, but eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable because people can misremember things very easily, and there's certain factors that can skew their memory of events. One of them is being, you know, high stress, which if there's a major crime committed, stress situation. Some other things that can cause people to misremember things is if the perpetrator has no distinguishing characteristics. They just sort of look kind of, you know, like an everyday person. They're not especially tall or short or thin or fat. That can be really hard for people to remember. Also, people are from a different race or culture that can cause them to sort of misremember things because, you know, they're just sort of remembering that specific difference and not really remembering the particulars of that person What? Chuckling over there. So yeah, so we know that eyewitness testimony is notoriously, it's just notoriously fallible. And so everything's relative also. So like if you can't breathe, at least in the material world, like everything's relative. It's not absolute, right? In the spiritual world, that things are absolute, but here everything's relative. Like if you can't breathe and say you have, asthma, or say you're drowning or something and you can't breathe, and suddenly you take a puff of your inhaler or someone pulls you up out of the water, all of a sudden you can breathe. That feels right. You're just like, oh, thank God. Wow. But that's not heaven at all, right? It's just relative to where you were before. It feels like heaven, but it's not. And so we can see this kind of mentality when you look at abusive relationships, right? People all the time will say, "Oh, I don't understand why she stays with him." He's abusive, and you can't figure out why would this person stay with this abusive person, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, this might have been a better situation most of their life, which is unfortunate. So to them, it doesn't seem that bad, but to a casual observer, it's like horrible, right? And the other thing is that people, they can become accustomed to really any way of life, even if it's hellish. So yeah, people, they've just become comfortable. See, I have a quote from the third canto. The 30th chapter of the third canto has a lot of, we're going to get into more of it, but I'm just going to read verses 4 and 5. The living entity, in whatever species of life he appears, finds a particular type of satisfaction in that species, and he is never averse to being situated in such a condition. Living entity is satisfied in his own particular species of life, while deluded by the covering influence of the illusory energy. He feels little inclined to cast off his body, even when in hell, for he takes delight in hellish enjoyment. So we can see people taking delight in hellish enjoyment all around us nowadays, I mean, there's so many just really awful movies out there that are just like horribly violent. I really enjoyed, before I became a devotee, I really enjoyed the show Dexter, right? Which was about a serial killer. And everybody was rooting for him, right? Because he was the main character of the show. And, of course, in the show, they sort of softened it by he was only killing people that were like really, really bad. Yeah, they deserved it. But still, that's a hellish condition, right? We shouldn't be cheering for someone who's taking the lives of others, even if they're just really, really bad. We can see this right now in the news that CEO of the insurance company that got killed. People are not sympathetic at all. People are just like, they're cheering. They're like, yeah, he deserved it. Because people's rage at the insurance industry for denying, the denying people's claims that are valid.
Like rejectful claims. This one guy,
Yeah.
this one company, they reject everybody. So
Yeah.
they carved on the bullet to claim in terms of denial. Because he was so frustrated.
Yeah, he was using AI to reject 90% of valid claims. So people are enraged about this. And it's not just him. He's just, unfortunately for him, the one that was targeted. This is industry-wide practice,
Yeah.
Yeah. So people are not sympathetic at all. And it's not, that's a hellish condition. On one hand, we have people that are sick people that need help from their insurance that they've been paying into every week or every 2 weeks for sometimes decades, and then they get denied when they need help the most. They get denied. Meanwhile, the insurance industry's making billions and billions of dollars, and now someone out of their rage has decided to kill an executive from this industry. All of that is a hellish condition, right? None of that. No, who would want to be in that situation? Nobody, and any part of that situation. So, but this is something that we've kind of become this kind of world. Thankfully not, but it's still rare enough that it's, yeah. So one of my favorite stories, which I'm sure you all know, but I'm still going to tell it, that kind of demonstrates this principle, is when Indra got cursed to be a pig, right? So Indra was the king of heaven. He had a very high standard of sense enjoyment, right? He could do so many things that we could only dream of doing, Our level of sense enjoyment's like probably not even anything to him. Yeah, probably just like hellish for him, And he got cursed to become a pig, to go down to the material world and become a pig. And so he was born as a pig, and he got himself a nice pig wife and had some little piglets, and he's enjoying rolling around in the mud and snuggling with his wife and playing with his little piglets, and things are good. He thinks this is great. Things are just glorious. I love it. So the time for his curse to end, the curse has finally expired, and so when he was being retrieved from that world, he said, "No, I don't want to go. What do you mean? I'm having a great time. I'm enjoying with my wife and my kids. My piglets are so cute. The mud is so cool on my skin. I love my wife. No, I don't want to go." And everybody was shocked. They're like, "What do you mean? You're the king of heaven. We need you. We need your help." And so Narada Muni finally came down, and he was just shocked. And he ended up having to kill Indra as the pig, so that he could come back to the heaven and take care of the issues they were having there. And so that just shows you how in every section of life we can become satisfied with whatever we have. And I've seen this in my own life, where I can be satisfied with in situations where I should not be satisfied at all, where I'm being mistreated, where, maybe my living conditions are not very good. I have no way to keep my place clean or something like that. And still I become satisfied with that, right?
That's Krishna's mercy, that he covers you always when it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Because Krishna wants us to be happy. He doesn't want us to be hurting. Yeah. And it's also, if you end up going to the hellish planets and everything, there's a period before that happens where your consciousness is sort of kind of like beat down so that you're not, completely, just completely fried out when you're in hell. Oh, it's tolerable. This is tolerable. I have a button of it, and I really love it. And it's a little dog sitting in the middle of this room that's on fire, and he's got his little cup of coffee, and he just says, "This is fine," and the whole room's on fire, but he's just like, "Oh, this is fine." And I think that's sort of the mentality of everybody in the material world right now. Oh, yes, this is fine. The whole world's on fire. but everything's fine. I mean, of course, we have, you know, we're trying to improve things, but in general, people are like, it's not so bad, because if they realized how bad it was, they would be taking our message. Yeah, well, there's that story that God says he's, forget the particulars, but it was like there was some miners, and they were talking about how bad the hellish planets were, and the miners were not phased. They were just like, oh yeah, what, so it's, it's dark, it's cold in the mine, it's no big deal. And then Srila Prabhupada said, well, there was no newspapers there, and suddenly they were like, no newspapers, all the other elements of hell, but no newspaper. So just like today with people, tell them there's no coffee in hell. All right. So we can see from that story with Indra, he had his nice little family. That family life can really keep us on the material plane, and we can forget about our goal of life. Let's see. I have another nice quote. So this is from the 5th canto, 14th chapter. Sometimes the conditioned soul is attracted by illusion personified, his wife or girlfriend, and becomes eager to be embraced by a woman. Thus he loses his intelligence as well as knowledge of life's goal. At that time, no longer attempting spiritual cultivation, he becomes overly attached to his wife or girlfriend, and tries to provide her with a suitable apartment. Again, he becomes very busy under the shelter of that home and is captivated by the talks and glances and activities of his wife and children. In this way, he loses his Krishna consciousness and throws himself into the dense darkness of material existence. And then a little from the purport. When the conditioned soul is embraced by his beloved wife, he forgets everything about Krishna consciousness. The more he becomes attached to his wife, the more he becomes implicated in family life. This attraction is called Deva Maya. The attraction between man and woman is the cause of bondage for both, and actually both belong to the Para Prakriti, the superior energy of the Lord, but both are actually Prakriti, female. However, because both want to enjoy one another, they are sometimes described as Purusha, male, although neither is Purusha, but both can be superficially described as Purusha. As soon as man and woman are united, they become attached to home, hearth, land, friendship, and money. In this way, they are both entrapped in material existence. Yeah. So, and this goes, it's not just for, men with wives, it's wives with husbands as well. I think, let's see, in the purport to text 19, it says, a man earns his livelihood with hard labor, but the result is that he is plundered by his wife and children, exactly as a person in a forest is attacked by some thieves and burglars who take his money. Well, the same thing happens to women as well, except for in general, like women feel like, oh, they give up their body, right, to raise children. They give up their beauty sometimes to raise children and their youth. Because for most women, that's the currency that's valuable is their youth and their beauty, right? And for men, it's their ability to provide. And so the men are enjoying that youth and beauty, and the women are enjoying that ability to provide. So it goes both ways. It's not just the women and the children are just taking everything. Well, the man is also taking from the wife. So I was reading the Mukundamala Stotra, which you should read. It's really nice. But text 13 of this, O Lord of the three worlds, we are drowning in the vast ocean of samsara, which is filled with the waters of material hankering, with many waves of illusion whipped up by the winds of lust, with whirlpools of wives, and with vast schools of sharks and other sea monsters who are our sons and brothers. O giver of all benedictions, please grant me a place on the boat of devotion that is your lotus feet. So I like that, the whirlpools of lives. What does a whirlpool do? Kind of just keeps you, just sucks you down, or it can keep you stuck, like if you're in a flowing river and you get stuck in a whirlpool, you're just going in circles, or it can pull you under. So you're just not getting anywhere, right? Or worse. And then sharks, and I love this, vast schools of sharks and other sea monsters who are sons and brothers. So that seems pretty harsh, right? To call your sons and your brothers vast schools of sharks and sea monsters. But it's meant only in that way that it distracts us from our goal, our ultimate goal, which is to have a relationship with Krishna and to serve Krishna. When you have family life, it's so easy to become distracted in the minutia of everyday life, right? You have to make sure the kids are fed and that they have, enough money for their field trip, and that they have their, they get their braces and they go to college, and you have to make sure your wife or your husband's happy, and so all of that can be very distracting. So let's see. Okay, I don't have time to read that. I was going to read more about from the third canto when it talks about what happens to the family man that is, at the end of his life, and it's pretty harsh. I don't know if any of you remember that from the third canto, but it just talks about how his family, after he's unable to provide anymore, they kind of just sort of keep him like a little pet dog, and then he ends up getting taken away by the Yamadutas and going through all kinds of like hellish condition, and then ultimately just to be born again and do it all over again, and that's because he's so attached to his family. But sometimes people accuse us of being like too down on family life, and family life is very necessary and can be quite wonderful, especially if you're doing service together, you're keeping Krishna in the center. And family life is necessary for most people. And there are souls that actually need to be born in Vaishnava families, right? So that they can go back home, back to Godhead. So it is very necessary. But we should remain detached. The Varnashram system is kind of an ideal life pattern. It's a pattern for the ideal life. And so when you're young, you should be a celibate student, brahmachari or brahmacharini. And then around the age of 25, maybe get married, have family life. And then, but you don't stay in that family life forever. Then after family life, you sort of prepare, to retire from family life. So vanapras. And so during this time, you, with your husband or wife, can go and focus on your spiritual practice and really kind of nail that down and get really focused, highly focused. And then after that, around the age of 50, you should make a break from family life and dedicate yourself solely to that individual spiritual practice and go around and help others to also do that. So that's sort of the blueprint, but that doesn't necessarily fit for everybody. And I think when you realize that, I think the main thing to remember is that you want to do what's favorable for your Krishna consciousness. So for many people, it's favorable for them to start a family, right, for their Krishna consciousness, because sometimes so many of us are so preoccupied with thoughts of wanting a mate, right, or wanting a child. These are thoughts that can really be distracting, and so it can be very favorable for you to actually take on a mate and have a Krishna conscious relationship and raise Krishna conscious children, and then you're not always thinking, oh gosh, am I going to find a mate? Am I going to be able to have a child? No, you have a mate. And now you have a child. And so that allows you to focus your mind and do service and raise Krishna conscious children, which is like a huge service. It's very needed, right? Because that's what we're trying to do here. Besides have a relationship with Krishna, we're trying to help others have a relationship with Krishna, right? And so one of the best ways to do that is to raise your children as Krishna conscious children, who then they can help others as well. So, yeah, so we just want to do what's favorable for our Krishna consciousness and reject what's unfavorable for our Krishna consciousness. For some people, for them to, not have family life is unfavorable to their Krishna consciousness, right? So, and the opposite's true for some people. It's more favorable for them to stay celibate, right? And stay unaffiliated, we should say, in the relationship world. So we have about 10 minutes left. I was going to tell this one story. I've told it before, but it's one of my favorites. And it's just about the power of Maya. The problem is I've tried to find like the source of the story. I think most of you have heard the story, and I couldn't find the source. Like everybody knows the story, but nobody knows where it comes from. And ChatGPT didn't know either. So, but that's the story of Narada Muni and the glass of water, right? You guys know this story? So one day, Narada Muni and Krishna were walking along, and they have a very nice relationship. And Narada Muni said to Krishna, what's this Maya that, this Maya, please, can you tell me, I want to understand Maya, can you tell me about this? And Krishna, if you understand Maya, pretty much you understand everything then, but he said, okay. He said, yes, sure. He said, I will gladly tell you about Maya. Just let's go sit over here under this tree and I'll tell you all about it. And Narada Muni said, okay. And then Krishna said, but it's a little warm. I'm a little thirsty. Can you please go get me a glass of water and then come back and we'll talk I'll tell you all about this. And so Narada Muni said, okay. So he starts walking towards, there's like a village in the distance. He starts walking down this dusty road towards the village. And he's walking and the sun is just beating down and it's like so hot. And it seems like he's walking and walking and the village is just not getting any closer. And so he just realizes, oh my gosh, I'm really thirsty too. I think I'm going to ask for 2 glasses of water and I'm going to drink one. And so he's walking and walking. And finally he gets to the village. I sneeze. Excuse me. Okay. So finally he gets to the village and he sees a house there. And so he walks over and he knocks on the door and the door opens and standing there's just this beautiful girl, like the most beautiful girl he's ever seen. And he's just, his eyes are all big and he's just kind of at a loss for words and he doesn't know what to say. And so he's kind of just stammering and hemming and hawing. And then finally he just blurts out, will you marry me? And the narrator of the story said, well, because that's the way it is, in India. You don't really just say, what are you doing Saturday night, right? Just immediately, will you marry me? So the girl gets her father and they discuss things and it's agreed, okay, they'll be married. And so they become husband and wife and they're having a very wonderful marriage. They're very happy. And soon they have children and they get a nice house and they have some land and cows and everything and just very idyllic, nice time. And then suddenly, not suddenly, I mean, as happens, they have grandchildren. You know, the kids grow up, they start having kids, and so they have grandchildren, and Narada becomes this kind of pillar of the community, and he's well respected in the community, and he's got his cows and his wife and his kids and his grandkids, and it's just really beautiful. And he's just in bliss. So then one day, a great flood comes, and Narada Muni just sees all of a sudden, you know, all his farmlands just covered with water, and he sees, oh, now his cows are, you know, his favorite cows just floating away down the flood. He can't get to her. He sees his house just become totally obliterated by the flood, and so he's just in such distress. He's holding on to his wife. They see some of their grandkids and their kids get carried away down those floodwaters. They go under, they die, and they're just so distressed. And he's holding on to his wife's hand, and suddenly she gets ripped out of his hands, and she gets carried away by the floodwaters. He doesn't see her again. He's just in so much distress, and he just cries out, "Krishna, Krishna!" And all of a sudden, the floodwaters recede, and there's Krishna sitting under that tree. And he looks at Narada Muni. He said, "Where's my glass of water?" And so we have to kind of keep that in mind, you know, that's how strong Maya is that, you know, we think we're these bodies. We think that this is my family, these are my friends, but really, this is just one of many, many, many lifetimes that we've led. And so we just need to remember that, and certainly, you know, love your family, love your friends, but realize this is temporary. And you need to just be detached, but you can still love and be detached at the same time. And so with that, I'm going to end here. If there's any comments or questions, go ahead.
It's too bad he didn't ask his family to all bring water to Krishna.
Yeah.
And there would have been no nice family.
I think he forgot. Right.
Hiranyakashipu and you know, the gatekeepers, so there's like 6 demons come and just disturb everything, you know, and the Brahmas especially are really suffering, and got to realize it's all Krishna's plan, you know, and then look at the climate of where we are now, you know, verge of nuclear war maybe,
Yeah.
You know, Putin's threatening, and all they can do is chant Hare Krishna,
Yeah.
you know, do our seva, and just what happens, and we get blown up. Hopefully we're chanting,
Yeah.
you know, and you can't be attached. You know, you have, Krishna's in control. We are not in control.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. One of my favorite, or not, I don't know if it's my favorite thing to say to myself, but you know, I've gone through a lot of like traumatic experiences in my life, and so now I'm just detached from when these things happen. Doesn't mean it's not like, you know,
you feel
upsetting
it.
or whatever, or that I don't have feelings about it. But what I always end up telling myself now is, oh, so now this is happening, and
Right.
and just, okay, well, I just have to go with whatever happens, you know.
Right.
So,
Right.
like, I think the last time I remember thinking that was I got in a car accident, you know, and I saw, you could see, you know, okay, I'm going to get in an accident in about half a second, you know, and I just remember thinking, all right, well, this is happening, all right. So, and it sounds overly simplistic, but for whatever reason, that helps me to be detached. So, right? Is there any other comments or questions or?
Four things in perfect senses, choose potentially.
Oh yeah, mistakes and illusion, tendency to be illusion, and tendency to make mistakes.
And that
Shoot
illusion,
each other.
the illusion thing isn't part of the imperfect senses? That's
No, it's a separate one.
I
Yeah.
got that one.
They've got all four.
All right, I guess,
Thank you so much.
all right. Let's Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.
So,